This is Sarah, and I just want to take a moment to speak to you about this week's sponsor, Favor. Favor Inc. is a statewide family-led nonprofit 501c3 organization that is committed to empowering families as advocates and partners in improving educational and health outcomes for our children. Favor is the Connecticut state organization of the Federation of Families for Children's Mental Health. Favor offers a single place for families with children who have medical, mental, emotional, and behavioral health challenges to find information, assistance, and training. To find out more about Favor, please go to favor-ct.org. We are grateful for our opportunity to work with Favor as a sponsor, and now on to the rest of the episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Caregiver Chronicles. My name is Sarah, and today I have Erin Schneider with me. Erin is a parent coach and the founder of Mountain Summit Coaching. She works with families who have neurodivergent kiddos and empowers them. Hello, Erin. How are you today?
Hello, I'm good. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure to talk to you again. Would you like to further introduce yourself to my audience?
Yeah, happy to. So as you mentioned, I'm the founder and CEO of Mountain Summit Coaching. I help families with autistic kiddos on their journey with autism. My kiddo is almost 7. And when we got the diagnosis, we felt very alone. So my goal is to make sure that no parent has to go on this journey alone, that there's always somebody to walk alongside them.
That's awesome. And, I think a lot of times it takes somebody who has a child on the spectrum or to really understand what families are going through. And I know, your child is your big inspiration for working with families. What did you do beforehand to get you into this?
Yeah. So beforehand, I was a dog trainer, believe it or not, it's funny. Dog training is so similar to coaching in many ways, because you're really working with the people where they're at. And the goal is to not take over and do all the training. And that's kind of how it is with coaching. My goal isn't to just come in and tell you exactly what to do. My goal is to work with you and collaborate with you to help you in this. And more often than not, the parents know exactly what to do. It's just, we start questioning everything, right? And it was so similar in dog training. It's like, you know what to do. You just start questioning, like, well, this isn't working, or I'm not seeing results fast enough. So that's when they bring in a trainer to help them and guide them. And that's honestly what the coaching is. And so it's been fun. I feel like my past jobs have really prepared me for this. And this has really kind of been my calling more than anything. It's something I love, and I'm so passionate and so thankful to work with the families that I get to work with.
That's amazing. And you don't work directly with the child like an ABA therapist. Your role is more with the parents, helping the parents figure out, what works for them, because every family kind of operates different, has different dynamics, different expectations, different cultural things.
Yep.
Do you want to talk more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're right. I don't work directly with the child. I work directly with the parents, and I can work with either parents. I love when both parents are willing to come on and work together. That's my favorite. I work with single parents, married partners, whatever it may be. But yeah, the goal is really to sit there and first we kind of deep dive into, like, what's a typical day for you? Like, what are we struggling with? And oftentimes it's families that are struggling with meltdowns. That's a big thing. We're having meltdowns, and it feels like there's a disconnect of some sort, and that's really it. And it's like, all right, well, how can we kind of get to the bottom of, like, what's causing those meltdowns? How can we as parents stay regulated during those meltdowns? And it's a lot of, like, dealing with the parents' emotions too. And I think that's something that as parents, we constantly feel judged. When you get a diagnosis, it's hard. There's some grief that goes around that. It's not just like, okay, awesome, let's move forward, and this is great. You have to allow yourself to feel that. And that's my goal, is to let parents know that that's all normal. You're allowed to feel all the emotions. And sometimes you're going to be angry, sometimes that's going to come out. But my goal is to really help them and guide them through that. And, like, how can we as parents stay regulated and take care of ourselves, so then we can take care of our children to the best of our ability.
Thank you. And, I think that you're very right on that with the grief. People don't realize how, I'm trying to think of the right way to phrase this without sounding too poor me or too cold.
I know it's hard it's hard to find a balance. Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard to say I grieved for my child that's alive.
Right.
For their future. It's really hard to say it, but when you do say it, it's a truth bomb. I have a son who's probably never going to graduate college or get married or live on his own. And I grieve that. I see my friends whose kids are doing things that I know my son's not going to get to do.
Yep.
But not just now, but it's going to be harder when, all my friends' kids who are around the same age as my younger son, Joey, are getting married or graduating college or moving out. And I'm still in almost, taking care of him just as I am now at 18 or 21 or 30 or whatever age that may be. How do you tell parents that's okay to feel that way? Because there's just so much stigma about feeling that way. Like, how do you tell them it's okay?
Yeah. I mean, I tell them, first of all, it's like, let's take a step back. Autism is not a death sentence. So let's take a step back. And I think there is so much stigma still around autism, which is, something that what I love about your podcast is like, we're trying to change that stigma, like autism is not a death sentence. So let's first of all, not go down that path, but let's also take a moment and step back and be like, you are allowed to feel your feelings. And yes, as parents, even though we want to accept our children and we want them to grow and be, but we do kind of have an idea of what we want our children to experience. And when you say like, I don't know, my kid's ever going to go to college. I don't know if they're ever going to have that experience that I had, that I love so much, or get married or be able to live on their own. Those are all real and valid fears. And it's scary to be like, all right, well, that not only affects my kiddo, but it also affects me because I might not be able to have a retirement that I thought I was going to have. My husband and I want to go travel after the kids are older and do all these things. These are what parents are telling me, and they fear that they're not going to have that. And that's okay to grieve that. It's okay to feel sad about that. At the same time, again, it's not a death sentence. So what can we do to help support you now, to prepare you for the future, so that you do still get to, travel, you still do get to live some of your life that you want to live? And how can we set up your child to the best of our ability now so that we can prepare for whatever that future life is going to look like? And I think that's really it, is allowing them to be in that moment and to feel all the feels, but then kind of putting a plan in place. Like, all right, let's start working on this. What is that going to entail? What do we have to do now to ensure that we can have the best future for our kiddo and for ourselves as possible?
Exactly. And that's kind of where we're at, as a family. How can we make Joey happy? Mm-hmm. That's our goal right now, is how can we make our kid happy? And, another thing that you're a big advocate for is something that I'm a huge advocate for: getting your kids out into the world.
Yes.
Not hiding just because your kid has a diagnosis or a label or is autistic or has meltdowns or has bad days. Would you like to talk about that a bit more?
Yeah. So it's funny. I was just actually, my son's in feeding therapy right now and with an occupational therapist. And I was just talking to her the other day because my family and I we live in Colorado. So we went up to the mountains last weekend. And my son tends to be more adventurous when we go out than when he's at home. And we were talking because I truly believe that it's a disservice to everybody in the family when you don't go out and explore and experience new things. And I get it. I mean, I truly get it. When parents come to me and they're like, oh, we don't go to family events, we don't go on vacation, we just stay home. And I get it, because they're stressed. It's hard to go out and be judged wherever you go. It's hard to, constantly having to be thinking ahead, like, what do we have to bring with us? What do we have to do? But at the end of the day, I truly do believe it's a disservice for everybody, because as parents, we miss that. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've asked parents, like, well, do you want to go to those family events? Oh yeah, I really miss my family. They crave it. They want to go and do those things. So it's really important that we find a way. We might have to alter some things and make it easier for everybody, kind of have some preparation beforehand. But life, again, it doesn't end when you get that autism diagnosis. And I think it's so important to teach them as well that these are all experiences that you guys have to adjust to. Yes, you can still go out in the world, you can still do things, but I'm going to give you all the tools to help you so it doesn't feel overstimulating. Or if you do start feeling overstimulated, we have a communication where we can take a break. We've got that plan in place, and, our goal, my husband and I, we love to travel, and like, we have every intention of taking our kids to France and England, and there's some crazy different foods there. I love it, but it's going to be really hard for my kiddo when he goes. But I think those are all things that he wants to experience. He loves to travel, so I do think it's something that's really important. And, baby steps. Maybe you don't plan a 2-week European vacation right off the bat, but what can we do to help you prepare for those experiences? Because I do think it's so vital and just so important for everybody in the family.
No, I wholeheartedly 100% agree with that. We do everything we can with our kids. Aside from taking him, and granted, I wouldn't even want to go to like the Capitol Grill or something. You know what I mean? Like I know it's not appropriate for him. It's not even appropriate for me with my budget. So yeah. but that's a side note. But no, we do family friendly, appropriate things, and we get judgments and we get looks when we're out, and half the time it's like, you know what? It's that's a they problem. That's their problem if they have a problem with my kid being out in the world. And I think that families like you and coaches like you, families like us, we are changing that conversation. We're changing the narrative, and we're making the world more inclusive. And that's just going to make the world better for everyone.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest causes for burnout for neurodivergent families is isolation, or not necessarily the cause in general, but one of the biggest contributing factors, not just neurodivergent, but all family caregivers, is isolation. What are your thoughts on that?
I couldn't agree more. So one of the main topics I talk with parents about is self-care. That's just a big one. And it's finding easy ways to incorporate self-care. And one of the ways that we take care of ourselves is socialization. We have to socialize. Like, we're just social human beings. I mean, yes, I'm an introvert for sure, so I need my downtime, but I definitely need that time with other people. And so it's really important. And, maybe you're the person who's like got a huge family and you want to go to family outings, or maybe you're that person who just like wants to get together with a few friends. Those are all super important. But think of what we're doing if we're showing our children like how important it is and what those relationships look like. Like, we model so many things that our children need to see, and they need to see that it's okay to have one friend. It's okay to have like that one close friend, or it's okay to have 20 friends, whatever it is that they're comfortable with. And you're not doing yourself any good if you just stay in the house all the time, don't socialize. And you're also not doing your child any good either, because they need to learn those skills. They need to learn how to talk to others, what's appropriate, how to, introduce themselves, and how to build those relationships. Because whether you're neurotypical or neurodivergent, it doesn't matter. We all need communication. We all need relationships. It just might look different for everybody, but it's super important. And so that's definitely something I talk to parents about. Like, hey, if you're missing your friends, how can we get, a babysitter? How can we, find a way for you to get out and see those friends by yourself, and then also with your kiddo as well?
Yeah. Or even if you can't find a babysitter, have your friend over. Say,
exactly.
Hey, I know my house is a mess, but I have Napoli and wine. You want to come over? Or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just whatever you can. I'm a huge one of the good things we do as a family game night, and we'll have other families come for game night. And my youngest son can't participate in the games too much, but he'll go to bed when he's tired. My older son gets to socialize, play games with his friends, and we'll play games in the adults will play games and hang out in the kitchen. And it's just fun. The kids just have a good time, and they get social interaction, and adults get, and even if you have friends who don't have kids, there's still, hey, I have kids, come on over. Maybe and if cleanup is an issue or getting ready, you can always ask your friend, can you help me with blank? If food is an issue, can everyone that comes over bring a dish?
Yep.
you know?
Absolutely.
If they're your real friends, they'll get it.
And that's exactly it. And the thing too, like my best friend doesn't have children. And I mean, my kids adore her and she's amazing with them and she will help out. Like she's the one person I can rely on to help out. Like when my husband's out of town or something like that, she's always there. And at the same time, what you're also doing is you're educating these people who don't have autistic children. You're educating them about autism and they get to explore and we're destigmatizing it every single person we introduce our kids to because they get to see how amazing our kiddos are. And I think that's so important for all individuals to see that. And I do. I think it's just socialization. It's something we as humans, we crave and we need. And so any way we can find a way to do that. I love the idea of game night. I think that's brilliant. So helpful. And it's so fun, right? I mean, you're learning so many skills, how to lose. That's not easy for a lot of people. So, lots of fun skills there that are being introduced.
Turn taking, math is a skill in most board games.
Absolutely.
You could add up the dots on the dice or what, you know what I mean? Whatever level it's there.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. I have a tickle in my throat. I apologize.
That's okay.
But there's so much you can get reading, so much you can get out of a family game night. More than just playing games and having fun.
Exactly.
So do you notice that all families tend to have the same struggles, or does every family have like significantly different struggles?
Yeah, I think there's similarities. I would say most of the families, I think there's kind of a common denominator. But every family is so individual and it really depends on where they're at in their journey. I get some families who come to me that before a diagnosis, they're like, I'm pretty sure my kid has autism or sensory processing or ADHD, something's going on and we need help finding out what to do. I have a lot of families who come to me directly after a diagnosis. Like they kind of have that deer in headlights look, which I remember being there myself. It's just like, I don't even know where to begin. What do we do? And then I have families who are, have been diagnosed for many years and maybe their kiddo is turning into an adolescent and they're having some more problem behavior show up around those hormone changes. Wherever they're at in their journey, I would say the common denominator with everybody is connection and communication. There has been a disconnect of some sort going on and there's a frustration. How do we get back together and how do we become one? I think that's kind of the big common denominator I see in all these families. It might differ a little bit, but I think that's the big one is that connection.
Well, thank you so much for that. And I think, that there's a lot of truth to that. A lot of families have the same or similar struggles, different dynamics, same struggles. So how do you, another question I want to ask, because I know we talked a little bit about parent burnout. What's besides socialization, what are other strategies that you have for parent burnout and how do parents recognize when they're in burnout?
I think burnout comes up in different ways. I think it shows up in different ways. I think for some, it's going to show up in those parents that like they are just quick to anger. Like they immediately go to right to anger. And it's not just like, oh, I'm angry. It's like, oh, whoa, you're really angry. I think there's those parents. There's definitely those parents who are they're like, if you mention even adding, like, I used to think self-care was a bad word because it was just like, I don't know how I'm going to incorporate self-care. And I noticed with those parents, if you mention self-care, they immediately just kind of pull back. And it's almost like, I can't handle one more thing in my life. Like, this is just way too much. So it definitely shows up in different ways. It shows up in those parents that are just like quick to cry, which, I mean, I get it. I was definitely there. Everything set me off. I was just full of emotions. And so burnout shows up in different ways. And it really is, you just can't take on anymore. I mean, your body is just done. There's parents I talk to and they're like, yeah, I've been, diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. I mean, that's definitely can be signs of burnout. I know for me, it was a lot of things. My body was just done. One was like my migraines just came back and I just had just tons of migraines. I ended up getting shingles, it was just a lot of things where my body was just like, I'm going to force you to rest where you have no choice but to be in bed. And so My goal is definitely to help parents not get to that point. So what can we do to incorporate self-care? And I use that in quotes because, again, I know for a lot of people, I hate that word. It just feels like, well, self-care is going to the spa every weekend, or, it's these expensive, extravagant times to lay in bed and sleep all day. It doesn't have to look that way. I mean, honestly, it's like self-care to me is doing something that's easy for you that makes you feel good in the moment. So maybe it's 1 minute of breathing. Maybe it's writing, journaling every night before bed, but it's literally all you have time for is writing 3 things that you're grateful for. It doesn't have to be these huge, long things. It can, for self-care to truly be effective and to work, it has to work in every single day and be something that you genuinely enjoy and want to do. So how can we do that easily? And that's the goal with parents, is to make sure that we can find something that they can do, and that there's no right or wrong way to self-care. What works for one person is going to be totally different for somebody else. And you just keep trying until you find what works for you. But burnout is real. I mean, it's so real. And I really want parents to know that if you are burnt out, there's help. Let's get you help. But let's also get you help before you get to that point. And
Yeah.
what can we do to help, to support you?
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. And some of the things that you said on self-care, are 100% true. Self-care at first for me was like, I don't have time for that, or I can't afford to go get my nails done, or like go get my hair done every month. Like, this is crazy. Nobody has that kind of time or money, or at least I don't. And I have learned that self-care can be as simple as playing my favorite song and dancing in the kitchen. And you can incorporate your family in your self-care. And that's another thing. I don't have a babysitter, so I can't do self-care. No, you can play a song that everybody will dance to and have a dance party in your living room.
Yep.
And shake the stress off, and the kids can bounce around on the couch for a minute, and it is what it is. Everyone's happy. Everyone's laughing.
Yep.
And that can be a form of self-care. Self-care can be as inexpensive as going for a walk as a family.
Exactly.
Whatever.
And I love the dance party. That's one of my favorite things to do with my kids, is the dance party. And I always let one of the kids be the DJ, so they get to pick all the music. And it's really fun what they come up with. It's so hilarious. But yeah, we just get to shake our body, for however long. And we're exercising, we're moving our body, we're having fun. Music is a genuine way to that can lift your mood within seconds. Music is just a natural way for that. And so I talk to a lot of parents, there's 8 dimensions of self-care, really, 8 dimensions of wellness that I walk through with them. And music and arts is one of them. Getting out in nature is one of them, and I tell parents, I'm like, if you don't have time for a 20-minute walk, that's okay. Go barefoot out on your grass for a minute and ground yourself. It doesn't have to be these super intensive, long, drawn out, expensive forms of self-care. There's lots of easy ways to do self-care too that take up practically no time whatsoever. I mean, there's some that I do while I'm brushing my teeth, in the morning. So it's just what you can do and what feels good to you, what feels easy, because self-care shouldn't be hard. It shouldn't be something that's just you're dreading. You want it to be something that you look forward to every single day.
100%. I agree with that. And I also feel like it should be, individualized, because self-care is not, like you said before, it's not one size fits all. Not everybody likes to get their nails done. Not everybody likes to have dance parties.
Right.
Maybe just reading is self-care. Maybe spending a minute to read or whatever. Yeah. Everybody has their different things. And I would like to know more about that 8 dimensions of self-care.
Yeah. So I can't remember all of them off the top of my head, but it's the 8 dimensions of wellness, and it's definitely nature, socialization. I know financial is in there. So I know a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to talk about finances, but it's well, maybe for you, it's maybe you're stressing out that you haven't saved for your child's future. So can you do $1 a week? How can we save? How can we start doing stuff? What else is in there? Pampering is in there, but again, that doesn't necessarily have to, I know when I say pampering, people are they always think a spa day. Well, no, that's yes, that is a form of pampering, but that's not the only form of pampering. You can do other things too. You can give yourself a massage, give yourself a foot massage if that feels good. Putting lotion on every single day before bed, that's a form of pampering, so it doesn't have to be these extravagant things. What else? I'm blanking on all the different ones, but it's really just more about incorporating day-to-day things, stuff that's not even, super extravagant or hard. It's just how can we incorporate that into our bodies? And so that's something I definitely work on with parents. It's like going through that list and seeing what they want to do. Meditation's a big one. Spirituality is another one. Whether you're religious or not, it doesn't matter. You can still find spirituality in life, whether it be meditation or journaling or, again, time in nature is a great spiritual act. So there's lots that you can do that can incorporate every level.
Yeah, no, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. Can you give any like big tips for that you use, like best general advice that you would give family members or parents?
So one of them is definitely don't go it alone. I know for a lot of parents, when they get that autism diagnosis, they feel very alone. They're like, all right, I don't have any friends who understand me. My family doesn't get me. So find your tribe, whoever that is. There's lots of great organizations out there that are free, like Parent to Parent. I don't think they're in every state, but they're in a lot of states. And it's a free organization that you can sign up for and get to, you get kind of like a parent buddy. And then a lot of them have, networking events and things like that, where you get to meet other parents who are going through very similar things as you. So find your tribe wherever that may be. Find those friends that are there to understand you and who get you. And definitely have boundaries. That's another one that I work on with families is do not be afraid of boundaries. Boundaries are a really good thing. So if you have family members who make you feel guilty every single time you go over, then you need to create some boundaries with that family. Whether maybe your boundary is just like, we're done coming over anymore, we're not going to, or you have very specific set in place. Like, if you do this, we will leave. If you put my child down, we will leave. If you give me parenting tips, I will leave, whatever it is, don't be afraid to set those boundaries with family, friends, anybody like that. And even with your kids, like that's the other one. Parents are like, oh, I can't set boundaries with my children. Yes, you can. And you should. My kids know, like when I'm working out, which is only like 20 minutes long, you don't bother me unless you're bleeding or broken bones or something like that. That's my time. And that's my boundary. And I've had to work really hard to get to that point, but that's something that's been really important for me because that's my time just to be with myself. I can listen to music, whatever it is, that's my time for myself. And so it's okay to have boundaries with your kids. And so boundaries is a big one. And also you don't have to have all the answers. When we get this diagnosis, we're not given a manual and being like, here's everything you need to do. It's okay that you don't know everything right off at the beginning. I'm still learning as I go. I mean, there's so much that I'm still trying to figure out and learn, and I'm okay with that. And I'm happy to share that with families. There's no person that's an expert in everything. So that's why that tribe is super important. And that's why it's important to find people who can support you without judgment.
Thank you so much for that. And you kind of brought me into my next question. We talked a little bit before, before we started recording about, rabbit holes and, curing autism, like misinformation, curing autism and things like that. How do you respond? Because I'm still struggling with polite responses to craziness. And we all have that friend who's trying to help, but is also telling us, oh, bleach enemas are great. And I read all about it on the internet. You should, trying to think of the nicest way to put it, but you shouldn't put bleach inside your body, ever.
Just don't do that. Okay. Yeah.
I had another phrase going through my head at the time, but that's the best way I can phrase it. Yeah. How do you respond to those, and how do you coach parents in responding to that? And what do you do when you have a parent who's just thinking that this is the way that they're how do you help them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So learning how to advocate for our children doesn't always come naturally. And I think that's where parents like they should I have so many parents who are like, I should just know what to say to this people. It's like, no, I mean, especially I think we're all raised these days to be people pleasers, at least our generation more so. And so confrontation of any sort is really uncomfortable. And advocating can sometimes be confrontation because we have to put a hard stop and be like, no, that's not okay. And so when I'm coaching parents on it, or even in my daily life, there are times where it's just like, you know what, that person isn't worth getting into. Like, there's nothing I can say that's going to get through to them. So they're not worth my time. But I always tell parents, I'm like, when you can, try to stay calm and be as nice as possible. I'm not saying you have to necessarily be kind or necessarily be a people pleaser in those moments, but try to stay kind or nice because you don't want to turn them off. You don't want to set up their blockages where they don't want to hear you at all. So when somebody says something to me, like, I love when people come to me and they're like, I'll tell my son's autistic, and they'll say, oh, I'm sorry. Like, that one really bothers me. It's like, there's nothing. And I'll simply say, like, no, there's nothing to be sorry about. My son is amazing and his autism is lovely. And honestly, he's made me a better parent. And, it can be something as simple as that. If it's somebody who's really rude about it, then I'll just be like, what are you sorry about? I might question them. I think coming back with the question, because sometimes people don't mean it the way it comes across. So trying to get some more clarity on, well, what are you really saying here? Are you really sorry that my son's autistic? And why? Why are you sorry about that? So I do think trying to engage when appropriate and when you think it's going to be beneficial. I mean, if there's just like a random stranger on the street that I'm never going to see again, it's probably not worth my time. But if it's somebody like a family or a friend that I can see often, it might be worth having that conversation. And even saying, like, you know what, hey, when you say this, it really hurts my feelings, because it sounds to me like you're saying my kid is less than your kid. Is that what you mean? Because I'm sure I know you, and I don't think that's what you're trying to say, but that's how it comes across. And then that gives a person the opportunity to be like, oh, no, that's not at all what I meant. I'm so sorry. Or if they're a real jerk, they might be like, well, yeah, that's exactly what I meant. And then you can make the decision whether you want that person in your life or not. But I do think coming back with questions and getting some clarity is a really big way to advocate, and then you can educate after those moments.
Thank you so much for that. That's something that I think every family, I haven't had a conversation with someone, well, recently, most of my conversations with fellow autism parents are about their families sending them misinformation for cures and treatments and causes, totally. and all this stuff. And it's just such a hot button issue right now. And it's so I'm not going to get into all the things that are going around and all the misinformation, but right. I'm sure we all know. And there's just so many rabbit holes and so much stuff. And that's just something that I feel like as a parent, I don't always know how to respond kindly to other parents. And there are people, even like people that I'm close with, close relatives, who I've had to say, just, you couldn't be more wrong. And it's really hard. And sometimes I think the closer you are to someone, the harder it is to respond kindly.
Totally.
Sometimes your response is more, you couldn't be more wrong, because because you're close enough to that person where you can argue with them and still love them. Yeah. We all have, like, our spouses. We argue. I haven't met anybody who hasn't argued with their spouse at least once. Yeah. And if you never have, then I don't know what's wrong with your marriage. It's
exactly. Confrontation is not a bad thing. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And we all have that. We all have those people that we can say, no, you couldn't be more wrong because blank, but we can't just do that to like our mother's best friend's son or something, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Or mother's best friend. We can't just say, talk to them maybe in the same tone that we would talk to our sister or whoever,
Yeah.
Not
Absolutely. And I think that's what's so hard is especially with family, we don't want to rock the boat, because, and to be honest too, like our family sees us struggling. They see us going through all the things. So you'd think they have a better understanding of what we're going through. But I think in their mind, they're trying to help because it's like, well, here's this, I read this random article and they say it can cure autism. So everything's great. And you just kind of want to pound your head against the wall because it's like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what to say to you. No, autism is not curable. It doesn't need to be cured. There's nothing wrong with my child, and in those moments, I totally get it. It's like, how do we stay calm? And maybe you don't respond in that moment. Maybe what's best for your body is to just walk away and then come back at a different time and be like, you know what? Hey, it really hurts my feelings when you say those things. I know your intention is to help, but you make it seem like there's something wrong with my child, and there's nothing wrong with my child. They are perfect just the way they are. And, sometimes it's stepping away. And again, that's those boundaries. That's when those need to come in. And maybe that's a person that you just need to have very clear boundaries with. And if they overstep those boundaries, then you need to decide what you want to do in those moments. But I hear it all the time where families have to step away from family members because they're like, they were making it too hard for us and they made us feel bad every time we saw them. Or they would say something to my kiddo and make them feel bad. And, and that's the last thing we want.
absolutely. And I can say for the most part, I have a very supportive family, but I get the occasional comment, question, article, whatever it is that's not based in, reality that they've saw from this person's cousin's brother's friend or somebody else's aunt posted this on, we all get it. And 9 times out of 10, when we say, no, this isn't going to work because blank, usually they just back off, or at least in my family with my experience. And I'm very, very grateful for that. My whole family has come around to being amazing and supportive. And we even realized my son for Thanksgiving's coming up. And this episode will air after Thanksgiving, but we know my son doesn't like the big room my mom built with the big table because it echoes.
Oh,
so
sure.
My mom already has it arranged. Well, I'm not trying to exclude you. However, I know Joey doesn't like to be in that room with all the people. So Joey can eat here and you guys can eat with them. And like she's already said, we're going to do this to accommodate for him.
That's great.
And not a single person said anything otherwise. They all said, okay, fine. I'm very, very grateful for that.
That's wonderful.
But my second to last question for you is, what is your favorite? I know we talked about a couple of them, but what is your favorite self-care technique for yourself?
Oh, that's a great question. And I go back and forth between self-care because for me, it really depends on the season. I don't do well with this time of year where it gets dark so early and stays dark so late. So I let myself sleep. And when it gets darker earlier, I allow myself, instead of getting up at like 6 a.m. and moving my body and things like that, I actually allow myself to sleep a little bit later. So I don't get up until the kids get up for school. And that's been a really big thing for me. But other than that, my favorite thing to do is to get out in nature. So we live in Colorado. We have trails everywhere. Honestly, going to the mountains is that's my number one thing. And that's all year round. If I'm really feeling down or whatever, I'm just like, we got to get to the mountains. Let's just get up there. I don't care if we go for a hike, if we go sledding, even if it's literally just to drive up, breathe the fresh mountain air and drive home, it's worth it to me. That is my number one thing. But listening to my body is super important, and being okay with fluctuating and not just sticking to it. Well, this is what I have to do every single day. I think that's so important that people listen to that. So so sleep is number one. That's huge. And getting out in nature of some sort is really big for me.
That's awesome. Those are great. Those are two very great, very mostly accessible and affordable self-care techniques. I love it. Yep. Where can my audience find you if they would like more information?
Yeah, great. So they can find me at my website, which is just www.mountainsummitcoaching.com. They can also find me on Facebook and Instagram, both at Mountain Summit Coaching.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Erin, so much again for coming on. I really loved this conversation. It was really nice to talk to you again. And that will wrap up this week's episode of Caregiver Chronicles. If you'd like more information, Erin's website will be linked in the show notes. And so you can reach out to her. If you would like to support this podcast, you could go to Buy Me a Coffee or Ko-Fi and make a donation. Or the best way to support this podcast would be to like, share, and subscribe to our show. If you really like this episode and you know someone who could benefit from this information, please share this episode with them. And with that, that'll wrap up this week's episode, and we'll see you next week.